This happened about 6 months ago, and honestly, I still check my locks twice before bed every single night. I'm a 26-year-old guy, decent looking, decent job, living alone in a studio apartment downtown. Like most people my age, I'd been using dating apps on and off for a couple years. Nothing too serious, just the usual swipe right, swipe left routine when I was bored. That particular Thursday night, I was scrolling through profiles around 1 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. Work had been stressful, and my mind was racing. I came across this profile. Sarah, 24, brunette, really pretty smile. Her bio was simple: love coffee, hiking, and deep conversations. Nothing out of the ordinary, but something about her photos caught my attention. They looked genuine, not like those obviously filtered selfies you see everywhere. I swiped right, and boom, instant match. The notification popped up immediately, which surprised me since it was so late. Most people aren't active on these apps at 1 a.m. on a weeknight. But hey, insomniacs gotta stick together. She messaged first, can't sleep either. We started chatting and the conversation flowed naturally. She asked about my job, my hobbies, the usual getting to know you stuff. I told her I worked in marketing, lived downtown, enjoyed rock climbing on weekends. She said she was a nurse, worked night shifts sometimes, which explained why she was awake. But here's where things started feeling off. She kept asking really specific questions about my living situation. Not just where do you live, but do you live alone? And what floor are you on? And do you have good security in your building? I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe she was just being cautious as a woman meeting guys online. Around 2:30 a.m., she said she had to go, but asked if we could meet for coffee the next evening. I said sure, suggested a place near my apartment. She immediately knew the cafe I was talking about and mentioned she'd been there before. Again, didn't think much of it. It's a popular spot. That's when I made my mistake. I was tired, my guard was down, and when she asked what building I lived in, I actually told her, not my exact address, but I mentioned the name of the complex. She said she lived not too far from there. We said goodnight around 2:45 a.m., and I finally started drifting off to sleep around 3:15. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I can see you sleeping. My blood went ice cold. I sat up immediately, heart pounding, and looked around my studio apartment. The blinds were closed, but I suddenly felt completely exposed. I checked the number. It wasn't from the dating app. It was an actual phone number I'd never seen before. I texted back, "Who is this?" The response came instantly, "Sweet dreams, Michael." I hadn't told Sarah my real name. On the dating app, I used a shortened version, Mike, but this person knew my full name was Michael, and they knew I was trying to sleep. I jumped out of bed and ran to my window, carefully pulling back a corner of the blind. My apartment is on the 3rd floor, overlooking the parking lot. There, under a streetlight, was a figure standing perfectly still, looking up at my building. Even from 3 stories up, in the dim light, I could make out long dark hair. But wait, it gets worse. When I looked closer, I realized the person wasn't just standing there randomly. They were positioned at the exact angle where they could see into my window if the blinds were open, like they'd calculated the perfect vantage point. I grabbed my phone and called the police immediately. While I was on hold, another text came through. "The police won't help you. We haven't technically done anything wrong." The casual use of "we" made my stomach drop. There was more than one person involved. When the officer finally answered, I explained the situation as calmly as I could. They said they'd send a patrol car to check the area, but warned me that without any direct threats or trespassing, there wasn't much they could do. The person was standing on public property. By the time the police arrived 15 minutes later, whoever was outside was gone. The officer took my statement and advised me to block the number and be more careful about sharing personal information online. Standard advice that didn't make me feel any safer. But here's the thing that still haunts me. When I went back to check the dating app, Sarah's profile had completely disappeared. Not just unmatched, but gone entirely, like it never existed. Her photos, her bio, her conversation history, everything wiped clean. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every little sound in the building made me jump. The next day, I contacted the dating app's support team, but they said they couldn't find any record of a user matching Sarah's description from the previous night. They suggested maybe I'd imagined the whole thing, except I had screenshots. I'd taken a few pictures of our conversation to show my friend how smoothly things were going. When I checked my phone, those screenshots were gone too, deleted from my photo gallery somehow. 2 days later, I was walking to work when I noticed someone following me. Same long dark hair, keeping about half a block behind, turning when I turned, stopping when I stopped. When I ducked into a store to confirm my suspicions, she waited outside, pretending to look at her phone. This continued for over a week. Different times of day, different routes, but always the same person, maintaining that careful distance. I started varying my schedule, leaving work at random times, taking different paths home. She adapted to every change. The texts continued too. Never anything overtly threatening, just knowing things. Nice coffee choice this morning. You seemed stressed during your lunch break. Early night tonight. Each message came from a different number, making it impossible to block effectively, and they were always perfectly timed, like someone was watching me in real time and reporting back. I finally got smart and set up a camera in my apartment window, pointing toward the parking lot. That's when I discovered the truth, and honestly I wish I hadn't. The footage revealed that it wasn't just one person. There were at least 3 different individuals taking shifts watching my building. They had my routine memorized. When I left for work, when I came home, when my lights went out, they'd created a detailed surveillance operation around my daily life. But the most disturbing part was reviewing the timestamps. The watching had started before I even matched with Sarah on the app. The earliest footage showed someone in my parking lot from 3 nights before we'd even connected online. That's when I realized the horrible truth. They hadn't found me through the dating app. They'd been watching me first, then created the fake profile to make contact. The dating app was just their way of getting inside my head, learning my habits, making me trust them enough to reveal personal details. I moved out of that apartment within 2 weeks, changed my phone number, deleted all my social media, even switched jobs to a different part of the city. The financial hit was brutal, but I couldn't stand the feeling of being watched anymore. 6 months later, I still don't use dating apps. And whenever I meet someone new, I can't shake the paranoia that maybe this isn't coincidence either. Maybe they found me again. I matched with her on a Tuesday, and by Sunday I was running for my life through downtown Seattle at 2 a.m. Her name was Jessica, at least that's what her profile said. She was gorgeous, auburn hair, green eyes, that kind of smile that made you stop scrolling and actually read her bio. She described herself as an artist, said she loved indie films and hole-in-the-wall restaurants. Her photos showed her at art galleries, hiking trails, cozy coffee shops. Everything seemed authentic, organic, like she was just living her life and happened to document it. We matched on a Tuesday evening, and she messaged me first, with something clever about one of my photos. I was standing in front of a mural downtown, and she recognized the artist's work. That impressed me. Showed she actually looked at my profile instead of just sending a generic "hey." Our conversation was incredible. We talked about everything: art, travel, childhood memories, career goals. She was funny without trying too hard, intelligent without being pretentious. After 3 days of messaging, I suggested we meet for coffee that Saturday. She picked the place, a little cafe in the Capitol Hill neighborhood that I'd never heard of. When I looked it up, it had great reviews but was tucked away on a side street. She said she loved finding hidden gems around the city. Saturday arrived, and I got there a few minutes early. The cafe was exactly as advertised. Small, artistic, the kind of place where everyone looked like they either wrote poetry or played in indie bands. I grabbed a corner table and waited. She walked in at exactly 2 p.m. and she was even more stunning in person. Wore a vintage leather jacket, and had this confident way of moving that made other people look up when she passed. She spotted me immediately and walked over with this amazing smile. "You must be David," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. The first hour was perfect. We talked about her art. She's specialized in photography, particularly urban exploration stuff. She showed me some of her work on her phone, and it was genuinely impressive. Dark, moody shots of abandoned buildings, dramatic shadows, unusual angles. I was legitimately fascinated by her creative process. She asked about my job in tech consulting, seemed genuinely interested when I explained what I did. We discovered we both loved the same obscure films, had similar taste in music, even shared a weird fascination with true crime podcasts. But then something shifted. It was subtle at first. She started asking more personal questions. Not just what do you do for fun, but do you live alone, and what's your building like, and do you feel safe in your neighborhood? When I mentioned I lived in a loft downtown, she perked up immediately. "Oh, I know that area really well. Which building?" I was feeling so comfortable with her that I actually told her, "Big mistake." She nodded and said, "I've always wanted to see inside one of those lofts. The architecture is supposed to be amazing." Before I knew it, I was inviting her over. She said she'd love to see my place, maybe order some takeout, continue our conversation somewhere more private. Everything about it felt natural, like the obvious next step. We walked to my building together, and she seemed to know the neighborhood incredibly well. She pointed out her favorite shops, mentioned she'd been to the restaurant on the corner, even knew which entrance had the broken intercom. My loft is on the 5th floor, and she was impressed by the space. High ceilings, exposed brick, big windows overlooking the street. She walked around like she was studying it, taking mental notes of the layout. "This is exactly what I imagined," she said, running her hand along the brick wall. "Mind if I take a few photos? The lighting is incredible." I said sure, figuring she meant artistic shots of the architecture, but she was systematic about it, photographing from multiple angles, getting shots of the windows, the door, even the view from outside looking in. We ordered Chinese food and opened a bottle of wine. The conversation continued to flow, but I started noticing she was asking very specific questions about my routine. When did I usually get home from work? Did I travel for business? How well did I know my neighbors? Around 9 p.m., she got a phone call. She answered with, "Yeah, I'm here now," and stepped into my bathroom to take it privately. I could hear her voice, but not the words. When she came back, she seemed different, more distracted, checking her phone every few minutes. "I should probably head home," she said around 10:30. "Early day tomorrow." I offered to walk her to her car, but she said she was fine. We kissed goodnight at my door. Nothing too intense, just a sweet end to what I thought was a perfect first date. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was excited about seeing her again, but because something felt off. I kept thinking about her questions, the way she'd photographed my apartment, how well she seemed to know my neighborhood. Around 2 a.m., I got up to get some water and glanced out my window. There was someone standing across the street, looking up at my building. In the streetlight, I could make out a figure with long hair, wearing what looked like a dark jacket. My heart started racing. I turned off my lights and looked more carefully. The person was definitely watching my window. They weren't moving, weren't on their phone, just standing there staring up. I grabbed my phone and tried to get a better look, but by the time I positioned myself at the window, whoever it was had disappeared. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. "Thank you for a lovely evening. Can't wait to see you again soon." But here's what made my blood run cold. She hadn't written it the night before. The paper was slightly damp from the morning dew, which meant someone had been in my hallway after sunrise. I called the building manager immediately. He checked the security footage and confirmed that someone had entered the building at 6:47 a.m. using what appeared to be a key card. The cameras couldn't get a clear shot of their face, but it was definitely a woman with long hair. "That's impossible," I told him. "No one has access to my key card." But then I remembered Jessica had used my bathroom. My keys were sitting on the kitchen counter the whole time. She could have easily photographed my key card, or worse, somehow cloned it. I had the locks changed that afternoon and upgraded to a more secure entry system, but the feeling of violation was overwhelming. She'd been in my building while I was sleeping, had walked right past my door, maybe even tried to get inside. That evening, around the same time she'd called me the night before, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hi David, it's Jessica. I had such a wonderful time last night. How did you get this number? I asked. We'd only communicated through the dating app. You gave it to me, silly. Don't you remember? I absolutely had not given her my number. I was certain of that. I was thinking, she continued, maybe I could cook dinner for you tomorrow night. I know this amazing little market where I could pick up some fresh ingredients. The way she said it, with such casual confidence, like she assumed I'd say yes. Like she'd already made the decision for both of us. I'm actually pretty busy this week, I lied. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. That's okay, David. I'm very patient. I'll wait until you're ready. She hung up. Over the next 3 days, the signs escalated. I'd find small things moved in my apartment. A book turned to a different page. My coffee mug in a different spot. My bathroom towel hung slightly differently. Nothing major, just enough to let me know someone had been inside. The building manager insisted no one unauthorized had entered. But I knew better. Someone was getting in, and they were good at it. Thursday night, I decided to stay at a hotel. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Paid in cash, registered under a different name. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, the Marriott downtown. Really? I expected better taste from you. That's when I knew I was in serious danger. Whoever Jessica really was, she wasn't just some overeager date. She was organized, resourceful, and had been planning this longer than I'd realized. I checked out of the hotel immediately and started driving. I didn't know where I was going, just knew I had to move. As I pulled out of the parking garage, I noticed headlights behind me that seemed to follow every turn I made. For the next 2 hours, I drove randomly through Seattle, taking sudden exits, doubling back, trying every trick I could think of. The headlights stayed with me. Finally, around 2 a.m., I pulled into a 24-hour police station. The headlights drove past without stopping, but I got a glimpse of the driver, long auburn hair, just like Jessica's photos. The police took my statement, but without evidence of direct threats or violence, they couldn't do much. They suggested I file for a restraining order, but I'd need Jessica's real name and address for that. When I went back to check the dating app, her profile was gone. Not just unmatched, completely erased, like it never existed. It's been 8 months since that night. I moved to a different city, changed jobs, started over completely. I still don't know who Jessica really was or what she wanted from me. But sometimes, late at night, I get text messages from unknown numbers, just photos of random places around my new city. She's still out there, still watching, still waiting for me to let my guard down again. Three months ago, I thought I'd found the perfect woman online. Last week, I discovered she'd been dead for 2 years. I'm not the type of guy who usually has luck with dating apps. I'm 29, work as an accountant, pretty average looking, not particularly smooth with words. Most of my matches either never respond or ghost me after a few messages. So when I connected with Amanda, it felt like hitting the lottery. Her profile was incredible. She was a travel photographer, had pictures from all over the world: Paris, Tokyo, New Zealand, Iceland. She looked adventurous and sophisticated, the kind of woman who was way out of my league. But somehow, she messaged me first. I noticed you mentioned loving mountain hiking. I just got back from photographing the Himalayas. Would love to hear about your favorite trails. Right away, she was different from other matches. She asked detailed questions about my hobbies, remembered things I'd mentioned in previous messages, shared fascinating stories about her travels. She had been to places I'd only dreamed of visiting. We talked for 3 weeks before meeting in person. She said she was just getting back from a photography assignment in Costa Rica and needed some time to recover from jet lag and get her photos processed. That seemed reasonable for someone with her career. During those 3 weeks, Our conversations were amazing. She'd send me photos from her travels. Sunrise over Machu Picchu, northern lights in Norway, street markets in Thailand. Each picture was more stunning than the last. She explained the stories behind them, the challenges of getting the perfect shot, the interesting people she'd met. I started falling for her before we even met. She was everything I'd ever wanted: adventurous, cultured, creative, and somehow genuinely interested in my boring life as an accountant. When I told her about my weekend hiking trips to local mountains, she didn't seem bored. She asked for photos, wanted to know about my favorite routes, even suggested we could go together sometime. Finally, we arranged to meet at a wine bar downtown. She chose the place, said it was one of her favorites when she was in town. I got there early, nervous as hell, wearing my best shirt and hoping I wouldn't disappoint her in person. At exactly 7 p.m., a woman walked in who looked exactly like Amanda's photos. Same blonde hair, same bright blue eyes, same confident smile. She spotted me immediately and walked over. "You must be Ryan," she said, extending her hand. "I'm so glad we're finally meeting." The first hour was perfect. She was even more charming in person, full of fascinating stories about her photography career. She showed me recent photos on her phone. Apparently she'd just returned from documenting wildlife in Kenya. The images were breathtaking, and she described each one with passion and technical expertise. She asked about my work, and somehow made accounting sound interesting. She wanted to know about my clients, my biggest challenges, even my career goals. No one had ever shown that level of interest in my professional life. We ordered a second bottle of wine, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. She told me about growing up in small-town Montana, how she'd saved money from odd jobs to buy her first camera, the risks she'd taken to build her career as a travel photographer. Around 9 p.m., she got a phone call. "I'm so sorry," she said, looking at her phone. "It's my editor in New York. I have to take this. It's about a potential assignment in Morocco." She stepped outside to take the call, and I watched through the window as she paced back and forth, gesturing animatedly. It looked like an intense business conversation, which reinforced everything she'd told me about her career. When she came back, she seemed excited. "Great news," she said. "I just landed a 3-week assignment in Marrakech. I leave tomorrow night." My heart sank a little. Just when things were going so well, she was leaving the country again. "But," she continued, reaching across the table to touch my hand, "I'd love to see you again when I get back. Would you be interested in planning something special? Maybe that hiking trip we talked about?" Of course I said yes. We finished our wine, and I walked her to her car. We kissed goodnight, just a sweet, promising kiss that left me thinking about her for the rest of the week. Over the next 3 weeks, she sent me photos from Morocco, bustling marketplaces, stunning desert landscapes, intricate architecture. Each image came with detailed captions about where she was, what she was photographing, the people she was meeting. Her messages were consistent, usually 1 or 2 per day, always with new photos, always maintaining our connection, despite being halfway around the world. She asked about my life, remembered details from our conversations, made me feel like I was important to her even while she was working. When she returned, we made plans for that hiking trip. She suggested a trail about 2 hours north of the city that she said she'd been wanting to explore for her photography. We arranged to meet early Saturday morning at a trailhead parking area. I got there at 7 a.m. as planned, but she didn't show up. I waited until 8:30, texting and calling, but got no response. Finally, a text came through. "So sorry. Food poisoning from last night's dinner. Rain check." Disappointing, but these things happen. We rescheduled for the following weekend. Same thing happened again. This time, her excuse was a last-minute client emergency that required her immediate attention. Then the weekend after that, her car broke down. Each time, she was apologetic and eager to reschedule. After the 4th cancellation, I started getting suspicious. Not in our angry way, just confused. Everything about her seemed genuine, but her availability was becoming a pattern of problems. That's when I decided to do something I'd never done before. I reverse searched one of her photos online. The image I chose was one of her recent shots from Morocco, a beautiful sunset over the Sahara Desert. I uploaded it to Google's image search, not expecting to find anything. What came back made my blood run cold. The photo appeared on a travel photography website, credited to a photographer named Amanda Morrison, but it wasn't recent. It was dated 3 years ago. And when I clicked through to Amanda Morrison's full portfolio, I found every single photo that my Amanda had been sending me. All of them. The Himalayas, Costa Rica, Kenya, Morocco. Every image she'd claimed to take herself was actually from this Amanda Morrison's professional portfolio. I dug deeper into Amanda Morrison's website and found her biography. She was indeed a travel photographer, originally from Montana, specializing in adventure and landscape photography. But at the bottom of her bio page was a memorial notice. Amanda Morrison passed away in a climbing accident in Patagonia in December 2021. Her adventurous spirit and incredible eye for beauty will be deeply missed by all who knew her. My hands were shaking as I read it. The woman I'd been talking to had been using a dead photographer's identity, complete with her life story, her photos, even her personality based on interviews I found online. But who was the woman I'd met at the wine bar? And why was she pretending to be someone who died 2 years ago? We called the wine bar where we'd met and asked if they had security footage from that night. The manager was helpful but said their system only keeps recordings for 30 days, and it had been 6 weeks since our date. I tried calling Amanda's phone number, but it went straight to a voicemail that just said, "This number is no longer in service." Then I started putting together other clues that I'd missed. She'd never wanted to video chat, always said she was too tired from travel or the lighting wasn't good. She'd never given me her exact address, just said she was between places while traveling so much. And those phone calls during our date, I'd never actually heard the other person's voice. The most disturbing realization was that someone had spent weeks studying Amanda Morrison's life story, memorizing her background, learning enough about photography to sound credible in conversation. They'd created an elaborate fake identity using a dead woman's accomplishments. But why? What was the end game? We'd only met once, and nothing particularly valuable had happened. She hadn't asked for money, hadn't tried to get personal information, hadn't even slept with me. Last week, I got my answer. I was at home on Tuesday evening when someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman I didn't recognize, older than Amanda, with dark hair and a serious expression. "Are you Ryan?" she asked when I cracked the door open. I confirmed I was, and she introduced herself as Detective Sarah Collins with the City Police Department. She asked if she could come in and ask me a few questions about someone I'd met online. My stomach dropped. I let her in, and she pulled out a tablet with photos. "Do you recognize this woman?" she asked, showing me a picture. It was Amanda, the same woman I'd met at the wine bar. Her real name is Catherine Walsh, Detective Collins explained. She's been using multiple fake identities to meet men through dating apps. We believe she's been gathering information for identity theft and financial fraud. Catherine had been arrested the week before for running an elaborate catfishing scheme. She'd created dozens of fake profiles using photos and biographies of women who had died. Not just Amanda Morrison, but teachers, nurses, artists, all women who had died in the past few years and whose photos were available online. She would meet men in person to establish trust. Detective Collins continued, then gradually extract personal information through seemingly innocent conversations. Bank names, workplace details, family information, security questions. I thought back to our conversations, realizing how much I'd shared about my life. My bank, my workplace, my mother's maiden name, when she'd asked about family history. The good news, the detective said, is that we caught her before she could use most of the information she collected. But you should monitor your accounts closely and consider putting a fraud alert on your credit. Catherine Walsh was charged with identity theft, fraud, and impersonating a deceased person. During her arrest, police found detailed files on over 200 men she'd contacted through various dating apps, complete with personal information and plans for financial exploitation. I was lucky. She'd been building up to something bigger with me, but got arrested before she could execute whatever she was planning. The detective told me that Catherine had been running this scheme for over 3 years, always targeting men who seemed lonely, stable, and trusting. She studied obituaries and social media accounts to find recently deceased women whose identities she could steal. What still haunts me is how perfect she was at being Amanda Morrison. She didn't just steal photos, she inhabited this dead woman's entire persona, made me fall in love with someone who never really existed. Sometimes I catch myself missing Amanda, even though I know she was never real. I miss our conversations, her adventurous spirit, the way she made me feel interesting and important. But then I remember that every word was calculated. Every story was stolen from a woman who died alone on a mountain 2 years ago. And every moment of connection I felt was part of someone else's plan to destroy my life.